would have dealt with the U.S. a whole lot on trade.
Hello and welcome viewers, I'm Pia and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. On that note, let's take a look at the headlines this hour. US President Donald Trump has announced plans to cancel most of former President Joe Biden's executive orders. He's claimed that an auto pen was used improperly and Biden did not personally sign these orders. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has announced the resignation of his chief of staff, Andriy Yermak, following an anti-corruption raid. He's called for national unity, warning the country risks losing itself. According to reports, Ukrainian negotiators will travel to the United States this weekend for talks on Washington's plans to end the war. The delegation plans to meet U.S. officials, possibly in Florida. Russian drones and missile strikes multiple districts in Kyiv, injuring 6 people, including a child. Explosions hit apartment buildings, triggering fires, while air defense units engaged to protect the city. Hezbollah leader Naim Qassem has declared the group has the right to respond to Israel and will determine the timing for it. This comes after Israel had killed its top military chief Haitham Ali Tabatabai in Beirut. Europe's Airbus has ordered immediate repairs to 6,000 of its widely used A320 family of jets, which are the backbone of Asian short-haul aviation, particularly in China and India. French President Emmanuel Macron will visit China next week to push for a partnership based on mutual interests. He plans to urge Beijing to treat Europe as an independent major partner. Floods across Southeast Asia have killed at least 321 people as waters now begin to recede. Authorities in Indonesia, Malaysia and Thailand are rescuing stranded citizens after a week of cyclone-fueled rain. Well, viewers, those are the headlines and our key focus. US President Donald Trump has now claimed that many documents signed during former President Joe Biden's term are invalid because they were authorized, as he claims, using an auto pen. He has made the assertion in a recent post on his social media platform, Truth Social, where he challenged the legitimacy of executive orders and other actions signed during the former Biden administration. Now, Trump has stated that the use of a mechanical signature device meant that key documents did not have direct presidential approval. He's also suggested that the process may have been improperly managed by those around Biden during his time earlier in office. Meanwhile, Biden has firmly rejected these claims. According to him, all decisions and approvals were made by him personally during his term, and this includes actions related to pardons, executive orders, and legislation. However, there is no public record of how many documents were signed by AutoPen during Biden's term. In all of this, it is important to note that the use of AutoPen is not something new. Multiple US presidents, including Barack Obama and Donald Trump himself, have also used the device to sign official documents when traveling or unable to sign in person. Just last month, House Republicans stated that they view executive actions signed by AutoPen without documented presidential consent as invalid and called for a Justice Department review. With us on the broadcast is Mr. Collins Chong-Yu Keat, Foreign Affairs and Security and Strategy Analyst from the University Malaya in Kuala Lumpur. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. As I mentioned earlier, the use of the auto pen is not a new phenomenon. We've seen it in prior administrations, whether it's Obama or Trump himself. But now Trump is claiming that certain executive orders, pardons that were given by Biden are invalid because of the use of his claimed use of an auto pen. What sort of political firestorm is this likely to trigger?
Well, Trump is drawing a hard line on presidential authenticity. We have seen how the real thing that matters will be, of course, only a president's real signature carries weight, executive authority, and of course he's framing Biden's reliance on auto pen as a sign of weak leadership, detachment, and a lack of capacity, which accusations that he has made repeatedly over the years. And this becomes a credibility and competence attack. If Biden isn't signing all these orders himself, then are they really truly presidential decisions? And of course, they have been made by the staffers and all that. So we have seen how there's a delegated decision making in terms of volume, in terms of the repetition of these signatures being used, and this also undermines constitutional responsibility. And of course, also now he's claiming this to ensure that some of the politics can now be undone. And of course, also by attacking the usage of autopan, Trump is indirectly attacking Biden's own stamina, health, and capacity in carrying out his responsibilities towards the American people. So this gives Trump a political and legal pretext and context to immediately unwind certain Biden's policies, and that they have to have this kind of rapid reversals in areas including on immigration, on border security, on student loans and all that. So this is a big win and strategic move by Trump to shift the narrative and to portray that Biden has been weak all along, and that he has been relying a lot on his staffers, and he has seen now as a puppet, and not as a true presidential capacity in terms of carrying out the true tasks needed as a president of the United States.
Indeed, I also wanted to understand what sort of a precedent, if Trump does in fact go ahead and do what he's claiming to do, that he's going to consider all of these orders invalid. What sort of precedent would then Donald Trump be setting down the line for future presidents?
I think you set a very strategic and a good precedent to future presidents, in that the president himself will need to have direct control on all the signatures of all the important documents, and to have to be in the know of the decision making processes, and it's not being seen as a shadow governance or a puppet to certain people, and that every order will need to be personally viewed and signed and being decided upon only by the president himself or herself. So it's a direct presidential leadership capacity in that sense. And this move has also framed Trump's administration as very direct, hands-on, transparent, and vigorous and capable, in direct contrast to Biden's weak leadership and administration. So we have seen how this has shifted the blame to the Democrats, and why wasn't autopan being used? Of course, it has been used before, but how often? And was Biden actually reviewing these documents himself, and was he actually at the helm of decision making, or was it his staff or the staffers have been deciding on these policies? So this is the core concern of the matter that Trump is trying to portray, and that it is rightly so, because it is the most important decision making by the president, and the impact will be profound for the American people and the security of the country as a whole.
Absolutely. I also wanted to understand, could this dispute over the signature method then escalate to a legal fight as well? Could we see the Democrats taking it to the courts?
Well, of course, this will most likely prolong, and but it will give the additional positive pretext for the current Trump administration to use this as an excuse, also as a constitutional review, in that some of the policies being made or being undertaken by the Biden administration, and of course being signed by autopan and all that, will have profound implication for the American people, especially with regards to the core matters of immigration, border control, on energy, on defense policies. Absolutely. And the pretext was that this has not been reviewed by the president himself, by Biden himself, and that most of the decisions made are vague, ambiguous, and they do not reflect the decision making by Biden himself. So this is the core issue at hand here, and Trump is right to point out, and this is a serious matter that will affect the security and safety of the American people, and that the way forward will be, of course, for Trump to set a very good precedent for the future presidents, to ensure that only direct control is made by the president in terms of signing off documents and in terms of decision making at the highest level.
You've spoken about the fact that there are some very sensitive issues that are signed upon by the US president. In light of this particular dispute over the signature, how is this likely to impact international perception regarding the reliability of the executive actions of the US president?
Well, it differs based on who is at the helm. Of course, Trump is being seen as strong, capable, of course, also with his own charisma and the ambiguous approach. And of course, also we have seen how Biden has been portrayed as weak, incapable, and being bogged down by this conventional dogma of political correctness and of course conventional norms of decision making capacities in terms of whether it's foreign policy, whether it's internal policies. We have seen that before. We have seen how the disastrous decisions being made with regards to the Afghanistan withdrawal, with regards to how Ukraine conflict is started basically under his watch, and Trump is right to point out that, and this has been prevalent in terms of the contrast being seen under Democratic administration as opposed to the Republican administration, especially under Trump administration. So it doesn't really make that much of a profound change, but it has much more to do with who is really the president at that time, and we have seen the contrast now of Biden and Trump.
All right, so with that, I'd like to thank you for taking out time, of course, sharing your analysis with us on NewsX World. On that note, viewers, we're shifting focus to further developments, this time with regards to Europe's Airbus. We're now learning that Airbus has ordered immediate repairs to 6,000 of its widely used A320 family of jets in a sweeping recall affecting more than half the global fleet, which is, of course, the backbone of Asian short-haul aviation, particularly in China and India. As a result, airlines and aviation regulators around the world have issued advisories and directives. We're now learning that Indian aviation regulator has told airlines not to fly Airbus A320 family aircrafts until modifications are carried out under EASA directives. Indian airlines have, Air India has come out and stated that Airbus directive could lead to longer turnaround time and delays to scheduled operations. Meanwhile, Japan's biggest airline, the ANA, has stated that it cancelled over 65 flights after the Airbus 320 recall forced it to ground some aircrafts. South Korea's Korean Air has also stated that the work will be completed most likely by Sunday morning, that is tomorrow, on 10 Airbus aircrafts that require software updates. Meanwhile, UK Transport Secretary had stated that Airbus issues have limited impact on UK airlines, with fewer aircrafts needing complex repairs. This appears to be among the largest recalls affecting Airbus in its 55-year history and comes weeks after the A320 overtook the Boeing 737 as the most delivered model in the world. At the time Airbus issued its bulletin to the plane's more than 350 operators and airlines, some 3,000 A320 family jets were in the air. Shifting focus to what's taking place in Ukraine, we're now learning that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has stated that his chief of staff, Andriy Yermak, has resigned after anti-corruption investigators raided his home. Yermak has been one of the most powerful figures in Kyiv for years. He is not accused of any wrongdoing, but has faced huge pressure as the $100 million energy sector scandal has shaken the government. Zelensky has stated that the president's office will be reorganized and he will choose a replacement very soon. The scandal, of course, threatens Ukraine's political stability and its negotiations with the US over a new peace plan. Meanwhile, Russia has pushed maximalist demands, of course. Public anger has surged. Polls show that 70% wanted Yermak to step down. Zelensky, meanwhile, has urged unity within Ukraine, warning that the country cannot afford internal conflict during the war. With us on the broadcast is Colonel Sanjeet Sirohi, International Relations and Defense Expert, joining us from New Delhi. Thank you so much for taking out time speaking to us on NewsX World. Of course, this particular $100 million energy sector scandal has shaken Ukraine. We've seen resignations from some of the top ministers who were embroiled in the scandal itself. Now it seems that Volodymyr Zelensky's chief of staff has also tendered his resignation. There were polls that were showcasing that 70% of the population was in favor of this as well. Considering the fact that, Zelensky is dealing with the war and now troubles on the domestic front as well, where do you see this particular scandal headed as far as the negotiations for the peace deal are concerned? Do you think the Americans have some sort of leverage over the Ukrainians over the misappropriation of funds to the tune of $100 million?
Thank you, Priya. Thank you very much for calling me on this debate. Now, let me tell you, as you have already brought out, that Andriy Yermak, he was the most powerful man after Zelensky in Ukraine. And he was the one who was dealing with the American team as far as the negotiation for peace were concerned.
Yes.
And I believe he was a very powerful man, and whatever he decided was already implemented or was to be implemented. Now, the raid on his house on Friday by the National Anti-Corruption Bureau and the Specialized Anti-Corruption this thing, prosecutor's office, it has shown that there is something going on wrong with this. And not only this, before that, Zelensky has fired his energy minister, justice minister also.
Yes.
And in addition to that, there was a businessman who was close associate of Zelensky, Temur Menshin, who has also fled the country thinking that he will also be arrested or he will also be taken into consideration when the investigation goes on. So there is a lot of chaos going on in Ukraine and there is an internal instability. Now, on the one side, the negotiations are going on with US team. US team is pressurizing Zelensky to accept the 28 points which were given out. But Andriy Yermak was the one who had softened the stance of the Americans, and he was the person who was working on it. So there is an immediate problem for Zelensky that who is going to replace him and who is the person who is competent enough to talk to the Americans and dilute the stance which the Americans are taking based on what Mr. Putin has asked them to do it. So that is number one problem which I can identify. Number two problem is there is an internal problem. There is a distinct cry from the American, distinct Ukrainian people. They are talking about this energy scandalized where $100 million of this thing has been embezzled and there has been kickbacks which have been taken and even the government-owned companies are being pressurized for that. So that is number two problem. Number three is that Zelensky wants to join the European Union. Now, European Union has been very, very open about it that there is a lot of corruption. I think the Ukraine is the most corrupt country in Europe. So they have number of times they have told the Ukrainians that you must take strong action against the corruption, then only you will be included in the European Union. So I think there are a lot of problems for Ukraine and for especially for Zelensky. And I don't think he will be able to sort out this problem, especially when the negotiations are going on with the Americans and then subsequently with the Russians. Pia.
Absolutely, sir. Requesting you to stay on with us. We're tracking further developments as far as the war itself is concerned. We're now learning that according to reports, a Russian drone attack has hit Kyiv overnight, wounding 7 people. Loud explosions had rocked the city around midnight as multiple blasts were heard across several districts. Mayor Vitaly Klitschko has stated that amongst the injured is a 13-year-old child that is receiving medical attention. 4 victims are also hospitalized. Timur Kachenko, head of Kyiv's military administration, has confirmed that enemy drones are over the city and multiple targets lie on the outskirts. He's added that air defense units are actively responding to the attack to protect the capital. Mayor Klitschko has also urged residents to remain in shelters, warning that the city remains at risk while authorities are assessing the damage. Residential buildings and cars have suffered damage across several neighborhoods, causing disruption and panic amongst residents. Authorities, meanwhile, continue monitoring the situation very closely, keeping defense and emergency teams on high alert. Still with us on the broadcast is Colonel Sanjeet Sirohi. We've been seeing a barrage of attacks. These attacks are just escalating day by day. More people are losing their lives. Trump has pointed out that his first priority is to stop the war and ensure that further lives are not lost. But of course, his plan was being seen as being rather sympathetic to the Russian side. There were several negotiations that had taken place in Geneva with Marco Rubio and a Ukrainian delegation. Further talks were earlier held in Abu Dhabi between Dan Driscoll and the Russians as well. Now we're expecting a Ukrainian delegation to head to Florida over the weekend. Amidst all of this, there have been murmurs that some of the clauses as far as the cap that was put earlier on the size of Ukraine's military, that will be relaxed. Also the question of NATO-style security guarantees could also be provided to the Ukrainians. If a fresh draft does accommodate Europe's concerns and Ukraine's concerns in particular, do you think the Russians will then accept it or not?
Well, Pia, let's be very clear about it, that whenever the peace negotiation or something towards peace is being talked about, The Russian strategy is to start pumping more drones and start pumping more bombs on Ukraine so that they can pressurize Mr. Zelensky, who has been against this plan, what Donald Trump administration has put out, that is a 28-point plan. And there is no doubt about it, these 28 points which have been considered, these are the most of the points which are very, very, as you have brought out, they are very, very sympathetic to a Russian. In fact, it is, people say that it is a Russian plan, and this proposal was given by Russia to the Americans, and Donald Trump has passed the same plan to Zelensky. And for Zelensky, it is very, very difficult to surrender the territory of complete Donbass. The Russians have already pointed out that they want that Donbass region should be totally evacuated by the Ukrainian army. Even the strategic towns and strategic fortresses where the Ukrainian army is strong, Russians want them also to evacuate that and leave that place so that Russians can occupy that. So I think it is very, very difficult decision for Mr. Zelensky to accept this peace proposal, and I think Zelensky will be in a very tight position if he accepts that, because losing 20% of their territory is not a joke. Absolutely. And that is what the Russians are asking for. So I think the Russians, whenever the people are going closer to the peace, Russians, they always start doing more aggressive action against the Ukrainians, and that is what now they have started bombarding by drones and missiles the Kyiv, so that the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian president, he comes under pressure and somehow he signs the deal. So now we have to see how these 28 programs are diluted in favor of Ukraine to some extent, and what are the security guarantee which are being thought of being given to the Ukrainian. Yeah.
Absolutely, sir. With that, I'd like to thank you for taking our time, of course, sharing your analysis with our viewers on the broadcast today. On that note, we're tracking some further developments from the Black Sea region. We're now learning that 2 oil tankers have been struck by explosions in the Black Sea off Turkey's coast. A Gambian flagged vessel, the Kairos, empty and en route to Russia's Novorossiysk port, caught fire around 6 p.m. local time, 28 nautical miles off Turkey's Gefken. The blaze, which produced thick black smoke, is believed to have been caused by an external device, possibly a mine, rocket or drone. Fortunately, all 25 crew members are reported to be safe. A second tanker, the Virat, also flagged by Gambia, reported being hit about 35 nautical miles away. Rescue teams and a nearby cargo vessel quickly responded, and all 20 crew members on board were evacuated safely. Both vessels are under Western sanctions for transporting Russian oil despite the ongoing embargo. Turkish officials are investigating the cause of the explosions, and so far, no pollution has been reported up until now. The fires are, of course, being closely monitored. Well, viewers, due to paucity of time, this is all we have for this bulletin. More news and updates on the other side. Stay tuned on NewsX World.